Okay, it's 8 a.m. I'll call the meeting of the Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District Commission to order. Virtually so far, we have Commissioners Patrick Lytle, Brad Murphy, and Ezra Meyer. And I don't know if, I don't see that Marcia's come on yet. She might be a few minutes late. And then in person, Commissioners Clark, Freeze, Bookland, Paulson, myself, Hovel. Okay, welcome to all of our guests that are here in the room or attending virtually. Cassie, would you like to, excuse me, go through the virtual meeting guidance, please?
Good morning, Commissioners, members of the public, and staff. To help us have a smooth meeting, I'm going to review just a few decorum rules for all. While the Commission and staff are in person, we are still offering a Zoom option so members of the public can attend. If you are attending virtually and would like to speak, you can do so during appearances by the public. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and streamed live on YouTube, and the public chat has been disabled, but you can still send messages to the host if need be. Finally, Commissioners, please use your microphones while speaking and make sure your voice is directed towards the mic. When you're not speaking, please ensure your mic is off, that little green light is turned off, so others can utilize the mics. And as a reminder, only 3 of the table mics can be live at a time. Also, please state your name before speaking for those who may be joining us via Zoom. Those are the decorum rules of the District Commission. Thank you for following them, and let's have a great meeting.
Thank you, Cassie. Bill, any announcements? No announcements. Any appearances by the public? I don't see anyone in the room, and I don't see any hands up. So we'll move on to the consent calendar, where we have the meeting minutes from the last meeting, which was Halloween, approval of cash statement capital, approval of cash statement debt services fund, review of bids and award of purchase, Vision frame licenses, deployment services, and 3-year support and maintenance, review of bids and award of contract for Nutanix nodes and 3-year support. Sounds like some kind of weird drug. Review of proposals and award of contracts with option to renew Oracle licenses and support for WAM. Approve transaction amount and approve professional services agreement amendment to Lagoon Dikes Improvement Project. Review of bids and award purchase of 2024 fleet vehicle. And review and proposal and award of contract for W4 system improvements. Anybody have any questions on any of these items before we get a motion? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
This is Commissioner Freeze. I'll move approval.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Freeze. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Bookland, I'll second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Freeze, second by Commissioner Bookland to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? None. Motion carries. Okay, that takes Commissioner Rummel's joined too. Okay, just joined, so she just missed the vote. Okay, so Marcia, we're moving on to topics. We just approved the consent calendar. So topics, we have approved transaction amount, approved professional service agreement amendment, and bundling of capital projects, 9 Springs Liquid Processing Improvements Phase 2. Kaylin?
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Kaylin Hackler-King. And I am a project engineer for the district. And today I'll be presenting on the approval of the transaction amount, approval of the professional service agreement amendment, and the bundling of capital projects for the 9 Springs Liquid Processing Improvements Phase 2. For some project background, liquid processing has been going on since 2016 when we started the facility plan. And typically the facility plans incorporate a large section of the plant, and that is divided up into smaller projects to start moving forward with, at which liquid processing was broken up into 3 different phases. Right now, we are currently in phase 2, which is to address the aging infrastructure associated with the activated sludge system. Our activated sludge are the big tanks that you can kind of see foam on top. They consist of microorganisms that break down the different nutrients within the wastewater to help treat a large portion of it. The activated sludge is also, you can hear it be referred to as the BNR system, or biological nutrient. So right now, liquid processing improvements phase 2 is made up of 6 different sub-projects. This was originally the path we were going down because there was the possibility to have the construction done in different phases to help prioritize different equipment. But now, as we are nearing the end of preliminary design, we have realized that we will be able to do this in one phase. So the bundling of the projects will make the project management much more manageable and easier to treat these as one project instead of. So overall, there's a lot of work that we're looking to do in phase 2. So this aerial image of the plant is facing west. In that upper left corner is where we are in the maintenance facility. We're not touching the maintenance facility in this project, but I just wanted to give a little perspective of where we're at right now compared to this map. This is a large portion of the plant. It's everything highlighted in red will be, there will be improvements to those facilities during this project. So the large tanks in the center, they're the activated sludge tanks. And within this project, we will be upgrading to a hybrid flow process. And that will be made up of a low dissolved oxygen process, as well as our current modified University Cape Town, or UCT, process. In order to do that, we will need to add a baffle wall and a variety of sensors and valves to be able to convert between the 2 processes. But this will provide operational flexibility within the treatment plant to, depending on different loads or weather, or sometime in the future, being able to switch between the 2 to meet the best treatment possible. Another thing that is getting replaced within these tanks are the diffusers, which are currently, they are little plates that that supply the air to the aeration tanks. They're what cause the foam and the bubbles at the top of the tank, and this is so that the microorganisms within the activated sludge have the proper amount of oxygen to break down the nutrients that we're targeting. Right now, we are looking to upgrade this technology. The current diffusers are at the end of their design life, as well as they're just an older technology, and we are upgrading to a more energy efficient. The aeration control buildings, there are 4 of them, and they are just to the left of the activated sludge tanks on the drawing. These contain the return activated sludge and waste activated sludge pumps, as well as controls and electrical equipment. So within these, there won't be a ton of work done, but we will be looking into the assets that are within these buildings and making sure that the HVAC and the structural and electrical needs are that if they are aging well beyond their design life, that we are addressing those issues, and if they are compatible to meet the needs of the activated sludge system itself. We have two blower buildings. One is right in the middle. Blower building 1 is right between the activated sludge tanks, and just to the top left of the activated sludge is blower building 2. This consists of the blowers, which supply all of the air to all of the aeration tanks, as well as the influent mixing channels. During this project, we will also be providing a cross-connect because currently the plants have different supplies of air. And adding the cross-connect will provide redundancy within the plant so that if one blower fails in a building, we know that we still have the other blowers remaining, and provides a little bit more security between the plants. We will also be upgrading these to high-speed turbo blowers, which should save energy. I believe that we've presented on that in the past. As well as providing new switchgear, which is the controls for the blowers, as these are well beyond their design life. There also are a variety of influent channels within the treatment plant. There's one right before the primary settling tanks, as well as in the headworks facility. Right now, we mix them with air to keep the solids suspended so they don't settle out in tanks that we don't want them to. So these will be put onto their own blower system, a very small one, and this will allow us to target the proper air pressure within those individual diffuser systems so that we're not wasting air, because they don't quite require as much air as the aeration tank. And then right out by the effluent building, we will be adding a post-aeration tank. With a low DO process, we are dropping the oxygen levels within the aeration tanks much lower than we currently are. And this process, in order to meet the oxygen level permit, we need to increase the oxygen so that when the effluent goes out to the stream, it meets the permit requirements and is safe for the environment. And then not pictured is there's a large amount of assets throughout the plant that are associated with the B&R system that we are going to be doing a thorough evaluation of their quality and whether or not they meet the criteria to get to that 2050. So currently, we are completing the preliminary design report. Preliminary design started in January of 2023. We are expected to receive that final copy in the next week. But as of right now, we are currently wrapping that up, and we are looking to move forward into detailed design with Strand Associates, and that is projected to be completed in May of 2026, with bidding immediately following, and construction from there is projected to be completed in late 2028, early 2029. This project really addresses a lot of the larger issues with the liquid process. We have a lot of important infrastructure that is well beyond its design life. We have waste-activated sludge and return-activated sludge that were installed in the 1960s to the 1980s. All of our blowers are from the 1970s and the 1980s, as well as a list of a couple hundred more assets that we need to go through and look into to see whether or not they will make it to 2050. as well as there are just general upgrades that are needed to meet those 2050 loads, and make sure that we are well within our permit and safely treating the water to make sure that it's good for the environment. This project also incorporates energy reduction and operational flexibility. These just come hand in hand with we're making improvements to the process. So upgrading to newer blowers is going to inherently have an energy reduction, but also making conscious decisions to incorporate energy reduction into some of our decisions. So today I am requesting the approval of the professional service agreement amendment to continue to hire Strand for the detailed design of liquid processing phase 2, as well as the bundling of the 6 capital improvement projects into liquid processing improvements phase 2. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Greg?
Hi. So mine are all engineering questions. Sorry, Bill, thank you. Commissioner Freeze. So I had made several notes here during your discussion. We'll try and take these one at a time so I don't barrage you with questions. So my first one is, you mentioned a couple times the 2050 design load. So are our permit limits changing, or are you designing for increased flow and you need more throughput to the plant and you need improvements to meet that?
We're designing for projected increased. I can't speak for whether or not our permits are changing. Yeah, this is,
sorry. It's to meet flow and loadings for 2050. Sorry, Lisa Coleman, Director of Engineering. Flow and loadings for 2050. We're obviously looking forward into potential changes that we think may come with the permit changes, but we're not designing for those yet because we don't know what they are. But that was one of, you might recall when I talked about the selection for the hybrid process a couple months ago. We think that moving to low DO gives us a better shot at some potential changes in our permit that will come later with regard to nutrient loads. So we think it puts us in a better position to meet those possibly more stringent permit requirements, but obviously we can't design for permit requirements that we don't yet have.
Okay, so that's right into my second question. So you, Lisa, you just mentioned in the presentation the low DO. So, and it actually ties into the third part. So you mentioned you're going to change the style of air diffusers on the bottom. So the tanks are going to operate now at a lower D. So two things, questions. One, the diffusers I assume now are going to be a different style and more efficient, but you're also trying to operate at a lower dissolved oxygen content. Does this affect nitrate process through this? Is that what we're getting at potentially for the future? Is that where we're going with this?
Yeah, this does target the total nitrogen, which we are not currently permitted for, but this does create a significant decrease in it. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but that was one of the reasons why we ended up choosing it. As for the diffusers, they do have the capability of both the low DO and the current oxygen requirement. So although it's going to be a different technology, it still will have the range to supply both varieties of air.
Okay, so sorry, one last follow-up. So really the efficiency is partially because of the change in technology, but also just because you're pumping less oxygen, and that's a very energy-intensive process, right, to do that. So it's a twofold win in efficiency potentially, and in reduction in nitrate in effluent.
Right. It's newer equipment, so newer equipment is inherently going to be more efficient, right? But it's also a design in how much aeration you're delivering and where. You know, we're oversimplifying it a little bit here, but it also has to do with the zones. You know, where do the bugs need air? Where do they not need air? You know, and we need, you know, the process people here to explain that with greater detail, but it's more, you know, being able to target where you're putting the air and how much air you're putting. And the hybrid allows us, again, the flexibility, you know, and we acknowledge we might not be able to run this thing in low DO the whole time, right? As flow and loadings go up, we're going to have to turn the air back up to get us all the way to 2050. But it does allow us, you know, when 2050 comes, we're going to be building a plan over there, everybody, you know, and this gives us a chance to understand that new technology and have some practice with it before we go into designing the next plant.
Okay, thank you both. I'm done.
Okay, anyone else? Ken?
Commissioner Lytle,
Commissioner Lytle.
Patrick, and then Ken?
sorry for hopping ahead if I did. Yes, Commissioner Lytle here. Commissioner Freeze asked the smart technical questions, so maybe I'll follow up with a couple less smart questions. I noticed in the report that accompanies this, we mentioned that there's the potential, as we're completing further design, that additional assets could be included, which might increase the capital construction costs. The staff report also mentions that because the form of this contract is a not to exceed, we might actually not hit that ceiling on engineering design services. I think it's reasonable to establish the expectation that if more assets get included in this liquid processing bundled project, that we might have to come back and see an increase in the design fees as well. That was the first question.
I'll take that one. This is Lisa, engineering director again. So the way we have it structured now is we know there's all these assets that we have to evaluate. So we have enough, the amendment that we're proposing now has enough money in it to work through evaluating those assets, and if we so choose, design those assets. So we anticipate that there's enough in here to design those assets. If we get into it and we determine, hey, we actually don't need to do X, Y, or Z, well, then we don't have to design those things, and then we would, you know, the design contract would be less. So the thing that may go up, though, that isn't fully accounted for yet is the cost, the construction cost in the total project cost of all those assets. So we have the design already built in what we're asking for today, so I don't think we need to worry there. But the total project cost may need to be adjusted once we get through that process of the assets. And I think that's fairly normal way we would approach things, because we're doing that as we go with designs, and then we have chances when we approve the budget every year, right? So that's, you hear us every year talking about adjustments to this or changes in that, blah, blah. That's the time when we're able to do that update based on what we learned during the design process. So sorry, that's a long answer, but hopefully that got at your questions.
That was very helpful. I don't want to reduce it to a percentage, but as engineering as a percentage of construction, it looks like to be in that 8% range, at least the way the numbers were broken down in the report. And so if I interpret what you're saying correctly, that as a percentage would likely only decrease the farther we get into design. Again, I don't want to use that as a benchmark necessarily, but just as a rough rule of thumb to look up there, that seems encouraging. And then the follow-on question was, I see the extension of the term of service, the duration is to 2026. And I'm not 100% up to speed on our strategy for engineering services during construction. Will we anticipate modifying this contract to provide engineering services during construction, or will they actually provide CA services by default if we go with the current strategy?
Yeah, good question. So usually the way we do it we don't have the increase that we're asking for right now will get us through design. It will not get us through construction. So we always at the end of, you know, when we bid the project, you guys almost always see when we come to bid the project, we're usually asking for approving construction bids, and usually almost the same meeting, we're also asking for construction services contract for our consulting. So we negotiate that once we're there to get that scoped out accurately. So this does not include, this gets us through design, but this doesn't include construction services.
Thank you.
Okay, Ken?
Yeah, Commissioner Clark, is there a financial benefit to bundle projects together and go from 800,000 to?
I would say it's neutral. I would say it's, I mean, maybe a little bit just because of project management. We've been working these several projects as a single project, you know, for all intents and purposes throughout this process, but we've just been keeping the money in different buckets in case we decided to bid different things at different times. And now that it's clearer that, okay, this is all going to be one thing, the project management starts to get cumbersome when you're evaluating a certain asset. Okay, does it go with this project? Does it go with that project? You know, it starts to get cumbersome. So really it's a matter of convenience more than any kind of financial impact, if that makes sense.
Okay, I'm looking at $6 million and $75 million as some purchasing power. Make changes like it would benefit, district would benefit purchasing power. The other question I had was increased capacity. Does this entire project increase capacity 20%, 25%?
That's hard to put a number on. The way we think about that is in terms of design flow or design years. So this gets us basically a 20-year. We're setting it for usually it's a 20-year design life, but we're thinking, okay, it's done around 2030. So that's why we're designing till 2050. So this gets us to what we think are our anticipated flows and loadings through 2050. I'd have to look at the design report. I don't have it off the top of my head. We could come back with that information if you're interested, but it's got, you know, it's how much flow and how much. We have a very detailed tech memo about that I'm certain you don't want to read, but we could certainly provide some more information on that.
I mean,
yeah.
Typically, you know, we know that, for example, the plant handles about 40 million gallons a day. And I realize that the design flow for different parts of the plant in terms of million gallons per day is different. That's one of the reasons why you're doing this project. So I don't know what the million gallon per day of much of the liquid processing stream is. If it's 50, 80, I don't know. And then what are you going to? I think that'd be basic information for us to know, because we've been holding at that 40 million gallons per day for many, many years. In fact, it might even be lower than when I started on the commission 30 years ago, our million gallons per day, even though our population's increased. I realize that maybe we're beyond the cusp of energy water-saving devices having brought down or stabilized, and that with current population growth, things might increase. But, you know, to date, we really haven't seen that. So I think that's good information for you to, you know, just send next meeting or
yeah,
whatever.
Sure, we can provide a quick summary of that. Mm-hmm.
Ken, do you have something else?
The only thing I was going to follow up on that is that would be something that I think is very interesting to our member communities, what they're getting for $75 million. There's an increased capacity based on the growth of the...
And it's not so much, I want to caution a little bit, it's not so much changes to hydraulic capacity, because we had a slide in here about the different stages of liquid processing. So liquid processing phase 1 was really about hydraulic improvements to the plant. So if you recall, we made some of the tanks higher, right? And we made a different overflow structure that sends extra flow over to the lagoons, that kind of stuff. So that was more about hydraulic improvements. This is more about loadings, right? So as the population grows, there's greater loadings, more nutrients, more, more stuff in the water that you got to get out, basically. But we can provide a summary of what those loadings, those flows and loadings at 2050 are.
Thank you.
Greg? So follow up on that. I was thinking in my head, Lisa, what would be interesting to see is, because I know, Tim, you're exactly correct, right? The flows have not gone up, but loadings have gone up. What would be interesting to see is loadings over time, or flow over time, and loading over time, in terms of, so you could, I'm sure what's happening here is your concentrations are going up and your flows are remaining relatively stable. So, yeah.
President Hubble, Commissioner Meyer here.
Okay, go ahead, Ezra.
Okay, thank you. Kaylin and Lisa, thanks for this. I was struck on Monday talking to Bill about the agenda for today when he said that this is either the biggest or one of the biggest capital projects we've ever invested in, and that makes it really, really important, obviously. I wanted to ask, probably real consistent with some of these other questions that sound to me like they're leading toward a maybe study session in the future on the 2050 flows and loads projections. I wanted to just ask if I know it's not related to what we're approving today, but it is central to that question of the future projections that we're kind of premised on as we do these kinds of design efforts. And that is to what extent we're factoring climate change and its impacts on precipitation into those numbers. It's part of the portion of the pie chart that is our I&I contribution and all of that. Wondering if that's something we could talk about when we get into the details on the projected future flows and loadings.
It's certainly something they looked at as they went through the tech memo regarding flow and loadings in future. I mean, that's obviously a known thing that, but boy, the flow and loadings tech memo was about a year ago. So I'm reaching way back to remember what all is in there. So I don't want to, we can look back and provide some information.
Yeah, more a parking lot question for the future than asking you to be on the spot to answer it today. But I think if we're going to dig into that, that's one of the pieces I'd be curious to learn more about. Thank you.
Beth?
Commissioner Bookland, this is kind of feeding off of Ezra's comments or questions. You mentioned energy savings, and I'd like to really better understand how these would help with the energy savings, especially with concerns coming up with climate change and energy. And then you mentioned the diffusers, and I imagine the new diffusers might be a big part of that. So I'd like to better understand a little bit more about that. I'm just curious. Thank you.
We got a tech memo on that too. We can provide some more information. I think I have a capital project update in December, so I may circle back and answer, a couple of these questions through that presentation.
Okay, I got a question. Talked about we're moving in, basically you're going to be done with preliminary design, but yet you've got these facilities that you've got a placeholder for that, hey, it's like, we don't know what we're going to do here. Isn't that kind of, shouldn't you know that by the end of preliminary design that these buildings need or don't need, or what level of upgrades in terms of all of the equipment and everything they need?
It's more,
rather than leaving, sending out a blank check to Strand and saying, hey, take a look at this. And
no, I don't think I wouldn't think of it in terms of a blank check. I would think of it in terms of just the magnitude, the sheer magnitude of electrical, mechanical assets that go with a system with this complexity. So filtering through that and evaluating all those things. If we had a detailed asset management system, that would be easier. But, we're still kind of in the infancy of working through that as well. So in the future, hopefully that'll be easier. to identify those assets and, you know, have current conditions on all of them at all times, but we just aren't there yet.
It just seems that you would know by the time you're moving to the final design, which we're asking us to approve, that you would have that, information. You know, regardless of whether or not it was an asset management, the idea is you're moving to final design, you think you would know what you need the final design.
Well, that's what we're trying to do. I guess.
No, so it's really not final design. I mean, it just seems to me you would have had that done with preliminary design or before, or even schematic. You know what your asset level is and what quality they are and can they handle the situation.
Yeah, it's a numbers issue for me. It's just there's a lot of equipment that this project touches, and so you know, evaluating all that is going to take a level of effort. The conceptual design was more of, you know, big picture stuff of like what process are we doing, what flow and loadings are we designing for, what kind of blower technology do we want to use, what's our, you know, diffuser technology, kind of more conceptual level. Detailed, but more detailed conceptual stuff. And then the final design really gets into the nitty gritty. So, I mean, for me, there's a little bit of a hazy line between, well, what's preliminary design and what's detailed design. You know, we haven't broken it out quite so defined, I think, in other contracts. So that's one of the difficulties in doing that, right? Well, what is final design? What is preliminary design? What belongs where, you know? And this is just where we're at with evaluating these assets. This is the time to do it.
Okay, so do you have in this, I don't remember, it was like $75 million, $76 million budget estimate, total project cost estimate, something built, realizing you said that the cost may increase, but do you have something built in already for those things you're evaluating?
Some of those are in, but probably not enough. So that's just by virtue of the, you know, we don't, I mean, in some ways it would be nice if we worked on things and then we stopped and then we prepared the budget, right? But that's not how it works, right? We're working on stuff while the budget process is happening. So the timing of when we were completing preliminary design and getting these detailed cost estimates and when that fell within budget was a little bit unfortunate because we got a little bit better numbers as we were completing the preliminary design than we had when we started the budget process. So all this is to say that our number is pretty good, but probably not quite enough to handle all of those assets. So we think if we go through that process and we evaluate all those assets and we in fact do replace all of them, our total project cost is going to have to go up a little bit.
Yeah, you know, people use that term a little bit a lot, and a little bit always seems to me to be a good amount. You know, like, so when you say a little bit, what are you talking, 1%, 2%? No, it's going to probably be 10 or 20%.
No, I can give you a number, but
but you can't because you don't have enough design.
I can give you a number if you want. I mean, what we were, let me give you the number that we, based on current year, so we do our capital estimates in terms of current year, and then we escalate them over future years because, you know, the construction is going to take several years out, right? So by the time construction is done, that's not current year anymore, right? So we escalate it over time. So based on current year, our number and our new number from the preliminary design is about $6 million difference. If you escalate it out to the end, to the total project cost, it's more like 10 million. So that gives you a bracket of what, and again, if we go through all this stuff and we find that these assets we're not actually replacing them, then that number goes down a little bit. But that's where I think if you're making me give you a number right now, I'd say somewhere in the 10 million range for the total project cost.
Million additional to 70. So an additional 10 million on this, so it goes up 80 to $86 million.
Yep.
So that's to me is a little more than a little bit, and then it adds on to it may not add on to the design cost, from what you said.
Right.
It certainly will add on to the construction inspection costs and everything else.
Yep.
So.
And that's a normal. You know, I get it. It's a lot of money, but
it is.
It is. But that's the process, right? As we refine things, we get better numbers. And so by the time we do next year's budget, we won't be into construction yet. We'll have a better number, and then we evaluate that in terms of not just this project, but our entire capital project, or our entire capital program.
Okay, I don't think I'm picking on you, because
No, that's fine. I don't mind
answering. If you go and ask Paul name, I would delve down into this, because one of my pet peeves years ago is the same thing that's occurring now, that they have these projects and they just keep growing and growing and growing.
Yeah.
And, you know, the next thing you know, that when you've had a capital budget, you know, for a project, you know, back then they were $25–30 million, and it's up to $36–38 million. It's, you know, it's like, I went through a number of building projects when I worked, and, you know, we didn't have the capability of saying, oh, the budget's $6 million for the City Hall project, but we're going to bring it in at $8 million. No, you had to bring it at here it's a little different. And that's why this is what I'm kind of perturbed about, is the way, and maybe you're right, maybe it's something I'm not understanding about this whole electrical thing, is so, and I bet it's complex, but I bet it's going to be replaced, given the fact that I don't know how old the electrical equipment is in that building, but I bet it's going to be that $10 million, just because Strand's going to say, hey, you might as well redo it all, plus you get that design fee.
I agree. I don't want to give you false hope that it's going to go down, because, you know, there is a lot of stuff here that needs to be replaced. We have a lot of stuff that's really old, and, you know, we got to fix it.
Okay. Anyone else? Ken?
I understand your pain. I'm just wondering, it's a little hard for me to vote on this without some more concrete or exact numbers or ballpark numbers. If I agree to something that's $6 million and actually 10, I have a little bit of a struggle with that. I don't know if tabling this till the next meeting would help, or if that's enough time, but this is exactly what is frustrating our member community. Our inability, and everyone that's associated with the district, not your issue, it's ours. That's what's frustrating our member community, is when we handle things like this. Now, you approved 6, but, you know, it's actually 10. That's, the math to them is fuzzy. I'm starting to understand what they're looking at when they say that to me.
Dan?
Commissioner Fault, a question about the going from the 600 or 800,000 to 6 million. Is that in the budget this year, or is this outside the budget?
So, yeah, we're inside the budget. I mean, if we amend this contract, we're not going to be exceeding our budget, because our total project cost is already approved for the budget. So we can cover this money in the current budget that we have.
So are you stealing from something? And that stealing is a bad word.
No, I think,
because I mean, somewhere you just took 5 point whatever million away from something.
what we're asking for is just the design contract. So we're not asking, we could be asking now to increase that total project cost. We're kind of talking about two different things here. So we're talking about the design contract and doing enough of an increase here to fund our final design. The 10 million that we were talking about, that's total project cost. So that, the big number, you know, the largest lion's share of the cost for this project is going to be the construction contract.
And that's in the future.
And we're a long way out from bidding that. So we're going to have a chance to refine, right, and update that in next year's budget before we bid, in the context of all, you know, to some other folks' comments here, in the context of all the other capital program we have, right? So it's not a project that's only in a vacuum all by itself, right? We have to look at all our projects all together and how does our cash flow work over the years and all of that stuff. So that will all be done as part of that project when we have a better number for that total project cost. But if you're going to pin me down today, I'm going to say, okay, it's somewhere in the, you know, $10 million ballpark higher next year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working off what Commissioner Clark said, is under-promising and over-performing is better than, you know, saying it's only going to be 75 and it comes out at 86. I mean, budgeting is an art. Life. We have to watch out that we tell people what reality is and not what hoping is. That'll make people happier in that way.
Bill? Hi, this is Bill Walker, Interim Executive Director. I want to try to gather some threads here, see if we can go forward. The one thing I want to emphasize a couple things. First of all, this is a good illustration of the issues we were talking about in the budget, and I appreciate that and everyone's attention. I do want to sort of return to the original point of what is being asked for in this action today. We're asking for enough money to do additional design to answer the very questions that are being raised about what the cost will be. There is no other pathway to answer those questions but to do that design. So basically, if I want to caution people, to not approve this work today does not lead us to have any greater clarity about what the cost of this large project is. It does the opposite. It prevents the project from moving. Please don't do that. The other set of threads I want to gather is what I'm taking from this, and I guess I'll put it out here and see if anyone has any comments, because what I'm trying to do here is gather some direction from the Commission for what we can do better and additionally later. I suspect it would have been useful to people to have seen behind the curtain a little bit for how we got to the numbers we're talking about. We've alluded to various tech memos, which are the work that we've done. Would the Commission be interested in some additional information to show our degree of certainty, how we got to where we are, where we're going? Because I think that is the best way forward to help people understand what the situation is. Does anyone have any thoughts on that point?
Commissioner Clark, I don't think that will, excuse me, I don't think that will hurt the situation. And then back more exact numbers, what we're talking about for cost. And if it truly is a fact-finding mission, aging infrastructure, that's what we need to hear also.
That's what it is. I mean, it literally is. It's hundreds of assets that we need to go through and determine whether or not they need to be. Can they make it till 2050?
Yeah.
Do they need to be replaced? Can we? The other question is, okay, if we don't replace it with this project, is it going to make it till 2050? No, probably not. Well, then we're going to have to budget to replace it a different way. So there's no magic answer either way. Either you increase, either you throw it in this project and this project costs more, or you do a different project that also costs more. So.
Yeah, to me, it's a lot easier to justify the spend if we know what the exact cost is. And if it is a fact-finding mission, then let's call it what it is, because we have aging infrastructure and there's no deal with it. But underneath the hood, even if, fortunately, it might cost us $6 million to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we're at. Like Bill said, we have to proceed with the design to, to your earlier point, if we put this off for a month to approve it, well, that's not going to help us get a better answer, to be frank. We got to do this design to get a better construction cost estimate for you.
Yeah, understood.
Okay, Commissioner Lytle, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Lytle speaking. I think the size of this engineering design contract is probably part of the reason there's the additional questions and scrutiny. The uncertainty in the final construction costs, I don't see as being out of ordinary for the stage of design that we're at, and the level of assumptions that have to be made in our costing and our cost estimates. The other piece I would say in support of this approach is, if we're struggling in general to get capital projects executed on schedule, bundling, looking at larger projects like this, not having multiple designers that have to be coordinated, I see upsides to the approach the district is using here, to bundle both the design and probably the execution of the design. And then finally, the unknowns and the potential to run into additional assets that need to be renewed or replaced really moves forward, in some cases, our costs for maintaining the infrastructure. But in some respects, the larger and the more assets we touch at a single time, the more efficient we are in our execution of those upgrades. So while I think it's appropriate for us to have higher scrutiny for something of this magnitude, I see a lot of what I consider good practices at work here. And so I would speak in support of going ahead with approving this amendment. Thank you.
Commissioner Buckland, I would agree with that. I think bundling these makes a lot of sense and looking at the bigger picture. So I would also agree with the going forward. I also want to make just a general comment about the owner communities, because I attended one meeting and heard the frustration from the owner communities. But what I heard, maybe I'm not, interpreting this correctly, but what I thought I heard is that there was a lot of frustration among what we asked for in the budget and what we actually spent. And so I think if we can tighten those numbers going forward so that the owner communities can see exactly, okay, we budgeted this much. And I understand about budgets, and that's a big guessing game, and, but if we could kind of tighten those numbers between what we kind of estimate as a budget and what we actually spend, I think would probably go a long way in helping the owner communities to feel like we're being transparent with, our budget and our spending.
Okay, anyone else? My main beef is that it just seems to me that the things that they want to look at should have been looked at by now. Better construction cost estimate provided before moving, because that means by the time when this is all said and done, we'll get the cost estimate at the time of the bid, or maybe in the CIP stage, and that's when we'll know what has happened. I think, moving into final design, you would have known at that point what you need to design. Almost, from my standpoint, that leaving these amorphous projects out there for building should have been decided before this point, preliminary design, rather than with the final. But it is what it is. And then they could have been adjusting the total project cost at this point, maybe from 76 million, 86 million. Okay, any further comments or questions? Not, all those in favor of the, I'm sorry, we didn't have them. We were doing discussion with them. Okay, well, we were doing questions. Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion, Tom. Commissioner Clark.
Motion by Commissioner Clark, second by?
Murphy, I'll second it.
Okay, second by Commissioner Murphy. So we have a motion by Commissioner Clark, second by Commissioner Murphy to approve the professional service amendment agreement and bundling of capital projects for liquid processing improvements phase 2. Any further comments or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate the questions and discussion.
Okay, that will take us to the consider and possibly take action on recommendations from the Executive Director's Search Committee. The Executive Director's Search Committee met last week, and we came up with 6 candidates for interview. And as I've mentioned previously, the interviews will be held on the 21st of November, so a week from today. And they'll be virtual. And the candidates, the meeting will start at 8 a.m. And the last interview is scheduled to end sometime around 3:30. Remember, it was 3:30. And Then after that, there'll be discussion and consideration, discussion of the candidates and consideration of the final, deciding who of the 6 will be the finalists. So all commissioners are invited to attend, but you'd have to be there at 8 and then stay until the end of, basically, we'd also probably want you involved in deliberations, but we'd want you to stay through all interviews. So I want to thank Commissioners Freeze, Rummel, and Murphy for participating in our discussion last week, Thursday. So that those 3, the top candidates, possibly 3, will then move on to the final interviews, which will be in person, held here at the district. And the current timing, I think, has the commission arriving at 8 a.m. And it'll be an all-day thing, probably to 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. So you have 7:30? Well, we begin at about 8 a.m., the commission?
It will be 7:30 because you'll need to convene an open session and start the process at 7:30 with the debriefing.
Okay, so that's, yeah, so we'll begin, the commission will begin at 7:30 a.m. and then I think our first interviews are at 8. So we'll have a half hour for a briefing, and so that'll be an early morning. So all commissioners need to be, if you're going to participate, we want you to do, it'll be here in person. So no virtual attendance will be for that meeting because we'll be moving into different rooms. Okay, that then takes us to the next topic, which is review and approval of Executive Director first-year goals. I gave you a draft copy the last meeting, and I've got another, we just made a few red line adjustments to it. So the one that you had, we had changed the managers, and we've changed that to directors. So that's basically the former, what I always refer to as the former 7 direct reports. We took out inline out of staff and just say staff. And then Employee Leadership Council, ELC, instead of Executive Leadership Council. And then down in number 4, I just cleaned up the wording a little bit to say, evaluate the staffing and organizational structure over the course of the year and identify adjustments or improvements by working collaboratively with the directors and commission. Provide a report to the commission on your findings at the annual evaluation process. So we're doing this at the request of Brett Tellis. And normally our goals are set in conjunction with the person. So this is a little unusual, and even our legal counsel, Pamela Plore, who I've been working with on our offer letter type of thing, is cautioned. But Rep. Tellis wants this, and I decided that I think it's best to go ahead with it. And the reason is, I don't think these goals are anything too amorphous. I think what they are things that we want to see done. And so, for example, we know that we want them to better communicate, so we want a better communication plan. We know that they're going to have to gain an understanding of the district, whoever the person is. And then we also know, for example, that we want to work before the budget next year on a meeting with somebody from the city of Madison, the cities and villages, and the towns, one representative from each, to go over these issues that we had some discussion on today about expectations and how the budget and everything works and how we can, and the increases that we've had and how that really works over time. So that's why I thought it was best to still move ahead. I think we can keep these as subject to change, but at least gives, I think, the candidates that those 6 candidates an idea of the direction that the commission will be taking. and what some of the work products that they'll have to be involved with in their first year. So, that being said, anybody have any questions or comments? Beth?
Just a couple of further comments on this document. It is a living, working document. So that's the way I'm thinking about it. And so this will be modified as time goes on with whoever is selected for this position, and will be modified with time. But I do agree, it gives us at least a kind of a starting point, and so they understand kind of what we're looking for at the get-go. And so that's why I'm good with what we're doing here.
Commissioner Murphy has his hand raised.
Yeah, I reviewed the goals. I think they're fine. I like the idea that the new executive director would review these and work with the commission to make any maybe needed adjustments to the first year goals after they've been on board for a little while. And if we're at all concerned about locking in these goals as the goals, maybe we should just say that. Maybe there should be a sentence that indicates that in the first X number of months, the new executive director working with the commission will review and evaluate the goals, and together we'll make any adjustments to the first year goals as necessary. I mean, one of the things I thought about when I was reading them is that we've got a set of executive limitation policies that kind of guide the work of the executive director, and the goal that speaks to that is the second one that says gain a functional understanding of those policies. And I was thinking, well, the new executive director may have some opinions on those policies and want to suggest changes at some point. And maybe that's too much for the first year. I think that there's a lot that's already going to be on the person's plate, and I don't think we have to add to the first year goals at this point. So I thought they were pretty good set of goals when I initially read them, and that was the only one possible suggestion I would have.
Okay, so maybe what we would do is add a sentence saying the commission working with the selected executive director may evaluate and adjust the goals as needed, just
Yeah.
leave it at that, I think. Yep.
Yes, something like that.
Okay. Ken?
These are good goals. I appreciate the group putting these together. Team, from a high level kind of standpoint, all good stuff. Executive director level items. One thing, I'm putting my shoes in the executive director's position. One thing that would help me be successful in this job is to find out what everyone in the district feels about what's working well and what may need improvement. I'm not exactly sure, there has to be a survey done or something like that, but collecting some feedback from the employee population as a whole.
Yeah, and that's the intent of number one, and we've listed out, that's why we have staff. What we want them to do is come to us within a couple months as to their plan for that, because I'm thinking that each of those groups there's going to be a different level and different type of contact. So the type of contact he has with staff probably going to be not. There's so many more. There'll probably be. I don't know how that person would do it, but that's what they're going to tell us how they would do it. Obviously, the Employee Leadership Council might play a little larger role because from the staff feeds up to the Employee Leadership Council, and then the directors and things like that. So that's the intent of number one, is for him, or I don't want to say him or her, the person to put together a plan of action as to how they're going to have listening and communication sessions. And then that will give probably a timeline when that'll occur. And some of that may even occur by the first 2 months. Hopefully that first thing you would do would be talk to the commission and talk to the directors and then move on down the line, across the line.
As long as that position is collecting information, or they have their finger on the pulse of what's going on in the field, not just a management opinion. You know what I mean? I think we would have a better culture in the district, and it would be a better, more positive culture for everyone in the district, not just you.
I agree with that, and that's why during the interviews, one of the panels will be an employee panel, and it's going to have somebody from the Employee Leadership Council, but then I've asked for 2 additional employees, one from administrative and one from operations and maintenance areas, and I want them to be staff that normally does not have connection with this level. You know what I mean? We want to hear from those that really aren't involved. One thing I would say is that the candidates are also being provided the talent growth report that the commission had seen. I think that was back in August, as well as I think it was a survey of the employees, that report. So they'll be getting that. The 6 candidates that will be interviewed will be getting that information from Raftellus. So that gives them kind of a background of where we've been. Dan?
Commissioner Pultz, as you know, everybody in the world nowadays, you set goals for a year, and you used to only talk to your boss once a year about them. Got half of them today. When we're doing this, I think it would be good to have one person or someone to work with whoever the new executive is to meet quarterly or something and see how the process is, because I don't want to go 11 months. He's only got through 1 and 2.
Yeah, our past practice had been that we met quarterly with the former executive director. So I think that was going to occur. Additionally, as part of the onboarding process, Ezra and I have meetings every Monday for a commission meeting it was with the former executive director, now it's with Bill. And then that allows, we're looking at that time frame as to being the checking with him as to how progress is going and things like that. So, but yeah, the quarterly, we've been doing that, yeah. Yep, thank you. Anybody else?
Commissioner Meyer, I've got something.
Okay,
Just,
go ahead, Ezra.
Thank you. Sparked by Commissioner Pultz's idea there. I think I've got a thought here that's tied to the subcommittee's work and the hiring process here, but then it's probably a future agenda item idea. And that is, I know staff are working on a plan for onboarding of the new executive director, and then we have been talking about it at the subcommittee level as well. There's a hope that we're making an offer soon after December 9th, and potentially for as soon as beginning of January start for the new executive director. That's our hope, our hopeful timeline. I wonder if in December at our commission meeting we ought to have a conversation about that onboarding plan, both parts, the commission part and the staff part, on the agenda, so that everybody can just kind of understand what that process looks like, where they fit in, where the commission touch points are, all of that sort of thing. I think might be really good. We hadn't talked about that yet, but I think we probably will want to fit that in before the person starts, ideally, and have us all up to speed on what that's going to look like for the entirety of the first year and all the points along the way.
Okay, thank you, Ezra. Anyone else? Beth?
Just to build on Ezra, good points. We do absolutely need to talk about the onboarding because we all want this next position to be successful, and we might want to think about who we might want to engage in outside as well. As a consultant, we might want to use Raftellus, or BJ or another source to help us with the onboarding. So I just want to put that out there as an idea right now too. Thanks.
Okay. Bill,
Bill Walker again. I'm catching some procedural points over here. One, Mike just pointed out to me that the resolution, which is in front of you, already has language empowering, I believe, the commission president to revise the goals. You should consider whether that is sufficient for the point you raised earlier. I'll pause a moment.
That looks good. Ms. Murphy.
what we'll do is we will not add that statement that Brad had suggested, correct? Because it's in the resolution?
Yep.
Okay, that makes it more simple.
My second point from our legal counsel is a little bit of a circular one. The resolution says that you are approving the goals that were attached, but you're not. You're approving the goals as revised, consistent with commission discussion. So we'll scroll that in before that resolution gets signed. My last point is to try to draw out a little bit more clarity for what we should do in the December meeting on onboarding. Whoever said it is correct. We are developing an onboarding plan internally. Directors are leading that. Our organizational development specialist is corralling all of us to include a variety of meetings. We could present on the status of that. That's sufficient, or should we try to... What I'm trying to figure out here with this question is, who is presenting, who is running that study session? Should I do it? Should we do it together, President Hovell?
Question. I think it'd be fine if you did it, led the commission study session on the onboarding process. Help from me, let me know.
Right, that's what we'll do.
Greg?
So I just have a thought, sorry, with regard to Brad's point and putting, so I guess the question really is, the commission has authorized the goals to be revised by the resolution. My question is, this document, I assume, is what's going to be provided to the applicants. Do we want to make it clear to them that these goals can be revised? They won't have the resolution, I don't think. Maybe they will.
This is Vanessa. We could provide the resolution with the goals. I think the point was just to make sure we're capturing the goals that have been handed out here, because they do have some revisions from what was included in your packet.
Yep, that I got, Vanessa. My question was really whether we wanted to just alert the applicants that the goals are not fixed, that they can, that they have an opportunity to review. You see where I'm going with this? We know the goals can be revised. I wanted to just make sure they understand the goals can be revised.
I think what we'll do is the one we're approving today, the resolution will be reflected to say amendments as approved by the commission in the 11/13/2024 draft, unless there's something else we have to change the date. And then Janelle has been very kind, and Mike Lipsky, they helped work with this, and I think Janelle can then get that to Catherine Parrish today, both of them. So just send her both the resolution and then the updated goals. Okay? Anybody else? Do we have a motion to approve the goals, or approve the resolution approving the goals as of 11/13/2024?
This is Commissioner Freeze. I'll make that motion.
Oh, did you have something? Oh, Janelle.
Excuse me, this is Janelle Werner, Business Services Supervisor. I am just confirming, because there was been discussion for clarity, the edits that are made are exactly what is on the handout. There was nothing else amended, correct? Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Freeze to approve the handout that was drafted on 11/13. Do we have a second?
Second, Commissioner Clark.
Second by Commissioner Clark. Any further discussion? If none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None. Motion carries. Well, thank you to the subcommittee members for their work on this. And then, Mike and Janelle for the conversation I had that led to the few little red edits today, or yesterday. Okay. Back to the agenda. That's where it went. Okay, let's see. That takes care of item 4C. We'll move to Executive Director Report. Bill?
I need to ask for my agenda back because it has my notes on it for what I'm about to say. Bill Walker again. The only thing I have to say is to alert people to the fact that officer elections are coming in January. There is a commission policy on this. Those of you who don't already know, it is CP2O in the handbook for the three officers, of course, President, Vice President, and Secretary. What we are planning to do is similar to in the past. We will provide a very brief car-in resolution, which has basically two options in it. Finish the elections on the day that we bring it, or leave some period for whatever you choose to do with it. So just so that you're aware and can start thinking about who you would like to nominate, possibly including yourselves.
Okay, Vanessa, legal.
Good morning, Vanessa Wishart, Legal Counsel. We included a regulatory report or update in the packet. There really isn't very much new from as of today, other than that we did have an election last week, and so the makeup of the state legislature is going to be significantly different than what we saw in the last session. So that could have impacts on what kinds of bills we see. We'll be following those closely once the legislature is in session in January. And then additionally, at the federal level, EPA is still moving forward on a number of items we've been following regarding PFAS, including that biosolids assessment and a PO2W effluent study. We're still anticipating the biosolids assessment will be completed by the end of the year, but then obviously it is to be determined what impact the election might have on how EPA is moving forward beginning in January. So we will keep everybody up to speed on that. Happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Okay, anyone have any questions? Oh, don't hear any. Okay, future meeting schedule, that's in the packet. So we had a couple things that were brought up. Staff will get back to us on some of the items for the liquid processing improvements, some of that data, and part of it may be part of the December update on capital projects. And then adding the onboarding to the agenda as well. And any future agenda topics? Oh.
All right, busy day over here. Commissioner Howell, just want clarity if we are having a subcommittee before the December meeting for onboarding discussion?
I don't know yet. And that it may be more additional issues as well. We'll have to determine that probably after the 21st. So if we have a subcommittee meeting, it's going to be on this Thursday, December 12th, or the Monday or Tuesday before the commission meeting, the week of the commission meeting. And the reason is because the Badger Mill Creek presentation is on at 8 a.m. on the day of the commission meeting. And so we would have to meet after, but I prefer to meet before in case we have something the commission needs to act on. So, yeah. We've talked a little bit about onboarding, but not a lot. So we'll have to see. Okay. So that takes us to anything else? Anybody have anything else? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Commissioner Clark.
Motion by Commissioner Clark, second by
Commissioner Buckland, I'll second.
second by Commissioner Bookin to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. Hopefully you can join us.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
First.